Here we are. I am physically excited right now to get to chat with both of you. This is the 100th episode of the Perinatal Podcast.
Oh
Oh
my gosh.
wow. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. And I took the winter holiday off just for because I'm sure many people are relating to the winter holiday season and the robust scheduling of it all. And I really had been thinking, like, what am I going to do for the 100th episode? Like, that's kind of a big deal. And so Amanda's been on before. And when you all reached out, I was like, that's going to be it. That's going to
I
be
mean,
That's
how lucky
awesome.
are we that we get to be on the 100th episode? What an honor.
Yeah.
Thank you so
I
much for
know.
choosing us.
Oh, well.
Wow, I feel so special right now.
Oh my God. Well, I don't want to make it sound like it's too big of an honor. It's not smartless, but hey, we're doing what we can, right?
No, that's
Ah,
great.
well, you all, what an honor. What a treat. What a joy. I wanted to just jump in because I've already done all of your introductions in the beginning, so people are familiar with who you are and everything will be in the show notes. But how did you all meet? How did you all get together?
Amanda, do you want to field this one or do you want me to?
You take this one.
Okay. It's really random. I was just searching through my Instagram feed one day and I saw a posting of Amanda about her book, The New Mom Code. And I sent her a DM just saying how, yes, the wondrous book.
Hmm.
And I sent her a DM just saying how great her book looked. And she was so kind to send me a copy to read and review. And I was so impressed by it. And I really felt like I was reading myself. And I felt like I was just resonating with every single thing that she was writing and how she was doing it. And I loved how she had reflection points at the end of the chapters to really help you resonate with it and remember what you just took in. And her and I just kind of started a back and forth conversation. And it just kind of organically spun into us both being interested in creating something for moms and where you can be real and talk about motherhood and being unfiltered and not having to hold back, the struggles, the positives, the negatives, everything that everyone deals with. And it's so funny because we've become friends and I text with her and talk to her now probably just as much, if not more, than my best friends of 25 years. And we have never met. We live halfway across the country from each other, but we just clicked and it was just kind of kismet. And so that's kind of where we are right now. And that's how it all started. So it's really kind of crazy, but it's just seemed to work out.
Oh my gosh. I love that so much. That's as much as we can say against social media. There is so much to be found in those connections with other mothers and parents and other people in our
Yeah.
industries and all of that. And it's so funny too. Some of the people who I've never met in real life are the people I pick up my phone and text or want their opinions on things or want to
Yes.
vent to. And we've never shared oxygen.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's weird. Let's be honest. It's really
So
weird.
weird.
But I mean, at the same time, like I would have never thought that a DM could lead to something so awesome.
Yeah.
Honestly, for me, even I was able to get my publisher for my book through a DM, right? On Instagram.
Yes.
So Instagram has been this incredible resource for me, as much as I also find it to kind of be the bane of my existence
Yes.
because it's
Yes.
always
Yes.
posting,
Yes.
engagement, how do you do this next marketing strategy? I mean, it's wild, really, how Instagram can have fundamental positive impacts and then also have the downfall of you just kind of getting addicted to it too.
Well,
So
also that. Yes.
I feel very lucky though that I've had two incredible opportunities that have come from a social media platform.
Yes. It's amazing. And it really is. And I love the idea too of the things that you are putting out. Sorry, I feel like this is going to be like an We Love Amanda podcast a little bit. Emily and I are just over here like, so let me tell you why I love Amanda. And let me tell you why I love Amanda. Like, because it's so
Big fan.
great. But it's so funny. So I read your book before you came on the first time, and I have been working with my therapist literally yesterday. She was like, are you ever not working on yourself? And I'm like, well, the answer, of course, is yes, but like, but not as intentionally as I would like to be. And so there have been times where I'm like, what if I just consumed this book in a way that was for the enjoyment of it and not to like learn anything and not to like, not, well, learn, but not to like educationalize it. That's not a word, but like to learn and feel supported. And so then, are we allowed to talk about the lives? We're going to talk about the lives, right? We're not spoiling anything. Okay, just wanted to make sure. So, and so then when you all had asked me to come on for the live, which all of that will be in the show notes, everyone please come and watch. I actually I went to my chapter, and when I tell you it is dripping with highlights and notes and page creases and this and that. I mean, I was sending messages to Amanda. I was on a flight out to New York, and I was just like, girl, like, I feel so seen. This is amazing. Like, we do put out this, well, at least you have kids, so you should be grateful. Or at least your kid is healthy, so you should be grateful. Or at least. And perspective is so healthy in so many ways of like what gratitude I have to put my children to bed in a warm, cozy house every night. Yes. And also, I'm allowed to be frustrated and it's hard sometimes. And you mentioned in the chapter that we're doing about like crying in the shower, and it's like, yes, baby, yes.
That is my
I don't
favorite
know.
cry place.
I just feel like, the reason I wrote the new mom code to begin with was because I just felt that there were so many things that moms weren't being transparent about, that we were all hiding so many of our feelings under the rug or pretending that we weren't feeling them and just pushing through them.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, that's what just keeps leading to continuous unhealthy behavior, right? We are constantly holding all these things because we feel like we have to hold all these things. And we think that the things that we're experiencing are abnormal, when in fact, a lot of them are extremely normal. It's just we're not talking about them to either anybody or very few people. And people feel really uncomfortable talking about things that maybe reflect on them in a certain way that is not the most, wonderful, right? And Instagram, in some ways, or social media, in some ways, makes us believe that all these experiences are wonderful, amazing experiences, when in fact, it's yin and yang, right? There are times when parenting is absolutely amazing. And there are other times when you just want to pull the sheets over your head and be like, I'm not here. I'm not here. Pretend I'm not here. Can I have 5 more minutes of peace to myself? Right.
Absolutely.
So,
Yes.
for me, it's like why I wrote this book was really to validate so many mothers in their everyday experiences of parenting.
Well, and social media too makes, Meg, as you can see my Amanda book and my post-its with all of my stuff here. She always laughs at me for this.
I love it so much.
It presents such a cookie cutter, perfect non-reality of not only motherhood, but of life in general. You have all of these influencers or people out there who have their perfectly clean homes and perfectly organized refrigerators, and their children are doing everything perfectly and everything is just perfection. And that is not reality. Motherhood is messy. It is wonderful. It is gross. It is happy. It is sad. It is so many different things. And I feel like there needs to be more people like Amanda who put the reality of those things out there. And everyone, like you said, Meg, just, you should be happy to be a mom. You should be happy that your child is healthy, and that and the hardships that come with motherhood should be able to coexist in a healthy way. And you shouldn't feel criticized for having those two things, because like life, you have the good and you have the bad. And I feel like so many moms, they feel like they can't come forward and complain because they're going to be shunned, or people are going to comment something negative that's going to make them feel bad about themselves. And that's just not reality. I mean, life is good and it has its good and it has its bad. And the same comes with being a parent. And that's one thing I really loved about the book, is that it's raw and it's, it's honest.
I would have wanted to celebrate the vulnerability that anybody would have to put the less glamorous and fabulous pieces of motherhood out in a book like this, because I think anybody I've ever had on the show, or any person I've spoken to who's written a book, there is that vulnerability hangover of like, oh my gosh, I've just put myself out there and I can never get it back, because it is in physical print, it is in black and white, it is digital. And that for me, honestly, is a little bit of a hang up that I have even with social media sometimes, because that you have that like that fear of, okay, well, if I say this, hopefully most people understand where I'm coming from, but somebody can always come for you and da da da. And for this, it really is just so vulnerable and amazing. And in therapy, therapists, we think we're funny. We say, don't shit on yourself. Like to be able to say, I should be doing this or I shouldn't be able to do that. And I feel like that happens a lot with other people too, when you do go and seek the support of other people. And if people aren't in a space to hold that for you or whatever that is, and then they come back and just invalidate so much of that of like, well, at least you have a kid. So da da da, or at least, which also nothing empathetic ever started with at least. If we could please erase that expression from our vocabulary. And to have something like this really is just, I don't know. It's just so validating. It's why, group therapy is amazing because you get to help other people and you get to feel validated. It's not a me problem. It's a thing that's going on with everybody, and we're all trying to navigate it together.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny because right before we started recording, I just announced the audiobook version of my book. So
Hey, link in bio, link in
I'm
bio.
super excited about it. But the thing that's even more weird talking about being raw and open is that now it really is raw and open. So I didn't anticipate that I would feel as nervous and exposed as I do, but I feel almost more exposed because now it's my actual voice telling you about the things that have happened instead of it being something that I can kind of separate myself from. Like,
Right.
oh, well, no one's really going to read the book, or how many people are really going to read the book, or they're going to read little pieces of the book. But now, if they buy the audiobook, they're hearing it directly from me. So they're really putting my voice and my face into their heads. And
Yes.
that's kind of terrifying.
Oh, I really can imagine that because you're absolutely right. I think knowing your voice, having spoken to you, like I think I was kind of reading it from you, but you're right. There is that anonymity of people who don't know you, but they just found the book. A friend gave it to them. They saw it at the store. The cover, which is gorgeous, it spoke to them. I almost said enticed, but I was like, let's not like go for the pun here, Meg. Jeez. And there is a little bit of anonymity, even though obviously like you're talking very much about you, but there is still that little thing. And now you've just like fully ripped the Band-Aid off. It is literally like, hi, it's me. But I love that because so many people consume audiobooks and it's so meaningful. And so when we talk about like, mindful, oh my gosh, what is the multitasking? Oh, nothing like being on a podcast and losing all your words. Mindful multitasking, because I know as like default caregivers, a lot of time we're trying to find ways to come, like, I need to do this and this. And if I can do that, well, I do that. And listening to an audiobook while you're emptying the dishwasher and folding laundry is actually some mindful multitasking that can be done. And so now they've got your voice building them up, telling them, yes, my friend, I see you, while also tending to the things that they need to do. And that's just another opportunity for people to consume this important material.
I mean, I'm excited. I'm nervous. I'm excited. But I will say, I think the one reason why I decided to pursue it, even though my book came out 2 years ago, was because the feedback was really, as new moms, we just don't have time to necessarily pick up a book and read it. But we listen to so many audiobooks because it's so easy to be driving somewhere and listening to it. Or, when I lay down and go to bed, I don't necessarily want to pick up a book. I just want to close my eyes and listen to something. And I just feel like it was kind of one of those things where I had to get really uncomfortable in the idea of actually having it be my voice before I was comfortable enough to put it on audiobook. But I'm so excited to share it with the world. And Emily and I are super excited to talk about our show as well.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
So
I'm so, so, so excited for you all to just spill all of the tea and get us all caught up.
okay, Emily, you take the reins on this one because I know I've been talking a lot.
Okay. No, you're fine. So we're going to start off with an 8-week series, and it's going to feature 8 of the chapters of the book, The New Mom Code. And each week we're going to have special guests, we're going to have sponsors, and we're just going to dig in and we're just going to talk about the chapters. We're going to get our special guest perspectives. We're going to talk about our own experiences with motherhood. and just kind of have the back and forth fun banter and just have an open space to talk about our experiences, whether they be good or bad, and just kind of have fun. Just try to have it be a relaxed type of conversation, kind of like this is here, where we're just all talking and just going back and forth. And we're really excited about it. I've never done anything like this before. I always tell Amanda, I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I've never done this before. And she's always telling me not to sell myself short. She's a great cheerleader. And so I'm excited to do this and to get a chance to talk to other moms and put something out there, hopefully for other moms that they can relate to and enjoy and maybe gain something from.
Oh, it's so exciting. We just, as much content as out there on parenting and giving ourselves grace, I feel like so many of us continue to really struggle with internalizing that. It's the same thing as when we talk about, like, what would you say to a friend in this situation? But it's not like, of course I would tell her to take a break. Of course I would tell her that's good enough, air quotes. Of course I would tell her but not for me. I have to be perfect all the time and do everything myself. And so it's just so great to try to continue to find these new avenues and people who are so lovely and warm as the two of you, where people can really find that relatability and be, I don't know, to feel another opportunity to feel seen and heard.
Well, and when we talked earlier too about at least you should be happy. You should at least word. My personal journey to motherhood was not easy. I had infertility. It took us 3 years to get pregnant with our first son, who is now almost 16. And now we have an almost 3-year-old. So I have a 16-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
And then I lost many along the way, unfortunately.
Right.
But people don't take those things into account when you talk about motherhood and you talk about trying to have a family. Everyone always assumes just because you have one that it was simple and easy and cookie cutter. And that's not the truth. Everyone has their own personal story behind how they were able to become a parent, how they are dealing with parenthood, and how their children are. Every child has a different personality. I've learned that very well through having a 16-year-old and a 3-year-old. I tell Amanda all the time, oh my gosh, second child syndrome is real.
Yes.
But yeah, so I'm excited to learn more about other mothers' journeys and what they've gone through to become a mother and how it's all folded out for them, because I don't think people really think about that a lot when they think about people becoming parents. They just think it's the same for everyone, and it's really a very individual and personal journey, and everyone has their own struggles and their own triumphs. And so that's one thing that I'm really excited to do in the show.
Yeah. Also, just as a side note, it is called Unfiltered and Unstoppable.
Oh, thank you. We haven't said that yet.
Yes, I know. I had to say. So I just had to say the name of the show is Unfiltered and Unstoppable, and it will be every Friday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. And what I was going to say is the reason we titled it that was because we really wanted to be raw in how we discuss things, but we wanted to use that rawness in order to empower other moms. So we want to be able to really talk about those nitty gritty details that are, like I said, maybe uncomfortable. So being unfiltered, and then use that to be unstoppable. So to use that as power to either get over something that you're having a hard time with, or to use that as just a platform to feel like, okay, what I'm experiencing is not uncommon and I need to move past that and then move on to whatever my next goal is.
Yeah.
So that was something I really wanted to touch on, because I feel like the whole point is really to empower moms through sharing all this content. And we have so many incredible guests that are coming on from, we have Dr. Marcy Crouch, who she's called the Down There Doc. And she really is going to help us talk about postpartum sex. We have you on, who is going to be able to talk all about burnout, which I think is such an important topic, because even this morning I was listening to a podcast that in the UK, there was a study that came out that 90% of the population is experiencing burnout right now. So 90%,
I can't even be surprised, right? Though. That tracks.
It's, like we're now in the post-COVID era, as they are talking about it. And the reality is that we kind of are just getting to the letdown phase of, okay, now we're solidly out of COVID, but we
Mm.
haven't really processed all the things that happened during COVID and the way our businesses changed and our feelings changed and motherhood changed, et cetera, et cetera. And so, when we do get to talk about burnout with you on our show, it's something that I feel like resonates with almost everyone.
Yes,
Definitely.
We're also having Ann Marks on, and she is the owner of Full Feedings. And we're going to talk all about infant sleep, which I feel like infant and
Woo!
toddler sleep, which is also another topic that I was like, I still have problems with my son with his sleeping
Yes.
behavior.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that we talk about all these topics that moms just feel kind of squirmish about. And the good thing is they can listen. We want their feedback. Obviously, they can
Yes.
comment or anonymously comment,
Yes.
but we want to make sure that we're answering a lot of those questions that moms feel a little squirmy about.
Mhm. Well, and there are so many things in having this show. I've had on so many. I'll have somebody on who'll be like, "Oh, and by the way, you need to have this person on," and then they'll, and like pelvic floor therapy, physical therapy. I did not know was a thing until actually, but I learned about it a bit when I was training for perinatal mental health. But like when I was pregnant, I did not know that was a thing. Oh, I'm so sorry. There's somebody who just specializes in making it so that you can improve your chances of not peeing yourself when you laugh after you've given a vaginal delivery. What? That
They
what?
exist.
What? Like it's so wild. And then white coat syndrome exists. And I was just talking to a colleague of mine who's experienced a pregnancy loss recently and was talking about her experience with one of her providers. And I was like, you'd be shocked. Some of the most lovely and amazing and warm and empathetic people work in obstetrics. And quite the opposite also work in obstetrics. I had a doctor once tell me, oh, well, that's okay. You weren't all that pregnant. And I was like,
Oh my gosh.
cute, but
I had
weird.
the same thing happen to me.
Okay.
I
Okay.
did. The
And I wanted
very
to go
first
back,
loss I had.
and I wanted to go back. I want to be very clear. We do not participate in the trauma Olympics. So what is important
Yeah.
and hurtful for me might not be as hurtful for you, dear listener, and so on and so forth. And so I want us all to be met with curiosity and not judgment. But when you were talking about like the secondary infertility, is that people I feel often feel entitled to be flippant about that. At least you have one kid, or
Yes.
why don't you just blah blah, as though we haven't tried these things, or as though we didn't know. And so normalizing some of that, educating some people, like recognizing the things that maybe we could again meet with curiosity rather than judgment. Be okay with being ignorant on something and asking questions instead of having a really strong opinion when you don't really know what you're talking about. And so I appreciated you sharing your secondary infertility journey because so many of our listeners are experiencing that or have experienced it. And it's like so many things with fertility and pregnancy and motherhood, just kind of, meh.
It's so hard because no matter what stage you are in a pregnancy, in my opinion, you lost a child. It doesn't matter. You lost the future of what that could have been.
The death of a dream.
The death of a dream.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the perfect way to say it. And I unfortunately had 6 deaths of a dream. And every time it doesn't get any easier. And it's almost like when someone does actually, when a physical person you can see dies, you don't really know what to say, but there are so many things you shouldn't say and you don't say, like you
do
said,
say
at least
really
you have
ridiculous
one,
things.
or you'll get it next time, or keep trying, or just things that I would
It
rather
wasn't
someone
meant to
not
be
say
is a really good
anything.
one.
What's
Yeah.
meant to be will be. Exactly. And
No,
it's like,
thank
okay,
you. No,
so
thank
you're
you.
trying to say my child wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
How is that comforting? And yeah, there's so many. I could write a book on all of the horrible things that were said to me that I know were probably meant with good intention, but I would have
Right.
rather them have just said absolutely nothing.
The thing there is that just because you didn't mean harm doesn't mean I didn't leave with a deficit. And
Right.
I was just talking about this one recently about it's kind of the thing of like, you can't call my sister a bitch, but I can call my sister a bitch vibe. I don't have a sister, so I'm not talking about anybody specific, but that energy, like
Yeah.
if I get to a space through my own grief process and journey and work, also journaling and therapy or however I'm getting through that, and I get to a space where I say that was not the child that was meant to be, or that's because that's the work that I have done to get myself to that space. You bluntly pitching that out to me as a thing that's going to make me feel better 3 days after I've told you about my pregnancy loss, not empathetic, not helpful. And so I want to acknowledge a little bit of the double standard there. But again, it's like I've gotten myself to that space and expressing that versus just kind of, and we suck at grief as a country, like, or as a world, like we say the things because we're uncomfortable with your discomfort. And we're like, what can I say right now to make this better? And really nothing.
The lack of knowledge of empathy. Like people,
Yeah.
they try, but it's, you
Yeah.
know, and people also don't think about the journey up to that moment of, you know, you're trying to get pregnant, then the joy you see when you see that positive test, then all the thoughts that go through your head of, oh, what's this little being going to be like, boy or girl, what are we going to do with them, how are we going to raise them, and then all of a sudden in just one phone call it all comes crashing down and it's all gone. And you know, it's just, or one, you know, physical experience where you realize what's going on. And so it's a whole journey, just like parenthood. So the loss is just as much to me as a journey of the successes. So it's, you could go talk all day about it. Really, honestly, I could, everything that I've gone through with it. But, and I know there's so many other women out there that have dealt with the same thing. And it's just, it's the ignorance of empathy, and it's not the lack of trying to have it. It's the ignorance of not knowing how to have it or what to do, if that makes sense, and what to say in those moments. And maybe some of the things that we talk about in some of the episodes can help some people when their friends come to them. I mean, one of my dearest friends, unfortunately, they're unable to have children. So I'm very careful I'm the person she calls and she comes to when she needed advice about what to do and how to feel and how to deal with all of her other friends having babies and dealing with those things. And I'm very careful with how I talk about parenthood and my kids and things around her, because I know she loves them. She's the best auntie there ever could be. But I also know the pain of feeling like you may never have that dream. So I try to be very sensitive and very careful when it comes to my approach with her about those things, because it's hard.
Well, it's so great that you all are creating this space where all of these conversations can come up. And again, even normalizing, I go back to, first of all, the Down There doc, I'm so jealous. There's a therapist on Instagram. She's called The Distracted Therapist. And again, I'm like, I need that cute, quippy, I participate in ADHD and neurodiversity, come talk to me name. And the Down There doc is amazing. And like, to normalize, like to know that other people pee when they laugh and other people have trouble having sex, and there are questions and there's help with that. And being able to be in a space to talk to people or feel validated or think about things in a different way is just such a lovely thing that you're all creating.
Well, thank you.
I mean, I think what you create is amazing too, Meg. I mean,
Oh,
the funny thing is and now Emily and I haven't talked about this specifically with you, and I don't know if I want to out her, but for me, like I just recently was diagnosed with ADHD, or I guess
Bring it.
ADD version of ADHD, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, how did it take this long for me to get here? Right? And I'm like,
I literally stick Post-its to myself throughout the day
Love this so
when I'm trying to remember things.
Please
Like,
go to
not
the
even
YouTube
joking.
right now and watch Emily place Post-it notes on her chest.
Seriously, like my son laughs at me and my husband laugh at me, but I'm like, you know what? If you want your dinner tonight, you better not laugh at this Post-it, because this is telling me what I'm making you.
Yes, 100%. And it's so interesting. Like, are we ready to start episode 101 where we talk about Amanda's adult ADHD diagnosis? And by the time this airs, it will have already been over, but I am hoping to have it become asynchronous and available later. Like, I am literally hosting a continuing education workshop on 2 days after we record this about helping navigate adults who have a new diagnosis of ADHD, because it is so common, like especially for people my age. I was very lucky. My mom was an educator, and also I think I just drove my teachers so to the brink that there wasn't much of a choice either way. But also, props to my parents for advocating, like, girls don't have ADHD, girls don't have autism, girls aren't neurodivergent. What are you talking about? Absolutely not. And so most people didn't have that, and you found ways to mask it, and you found ways to get around it and deal with it. And untreated ADHD, whether or not you have the actual diagnosis or not, whatever your chaotic and twirly symptoms are, when those are unmanaged, they manifest as anxiety. And then that seeps into the rest of our lives. So literally, I'm doing an hour and a half continuing education workshop on this 2 days from now. Because again, I hope you feel normalized and validated. Like, yes, so many people do
Yeah.
not have the experience of being diagnosed in 1994.
Well, I was diagnosed when I was younger, and I know Amanda has just been recently dealing with it. And I told her I have something called long QT with my heart, which I just recently found out. So I had to stop taking my ADHD medication. I
Of
can't
course,
take
yeah.
it anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm devastated
Yes.
because I'm so less productive.
Mhm.
That's why I have posts. That's like a crazy person. That's why I have Post-it stuck to my body all day long, or on the wall, or the fridge, or wherever I can find in my home,
Mhm.
because I can't remember things and I can't focus. And I know Amanda has been telling me about some of her similar struggles with that.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's wild. The thing that's interesting as well is that I feel like a lot of women, when they do get diagnosed older, is
Mhm.
that we've had to come up with so many of our own coping strategies in order to deal with it that are
Yes.
very strange. Like,
Yes.
I have had, generalized anxiety disorder from the time I was probably 5 years old. I mean, my mom, I would write her notes about how I was so afraid she was going to die, right? When I was 5, right? So I've had this anxiety for since the
Bless
time I
your heart.
probably was born, right? And
Right.
all these symptoms, like they just kind of were pushed under the rug. It was the
Yeah.
same way that before any exam I had, I would get sick, like physically sick in the bathroom before the test, right?
True.
All through
True.
middle school, all through
True.
high school, right? And no one ever really was, I guess, treating me. It was kind of this idea of, okay, just get over it, push through it, just do it, you know? And
Yes.
now, as an adult, I'm like, why, right? Why are we forcing women to suffer through all of these things when there are solutions, techniques? It doesn't even have to necessarily be medicine,
No, it
right?
certainly doesn't.
There are definitely things you can do to help manage your time. There are now so many resources in terms of apps and support groups, and there are things you can do to make it easier. But
Yes.
for whatever reason, I feel like when we were kids, adults in our lives were just like, oh, you'll figure it out. It's okay. Just keep going. You've
Yes.
got this, right?
Yes.
And I just feel like, unfortunately, it's taken until now, until people like you have really said, okay, we're going to talk about this and we're going to get real about this and we're going to start giving you the tools that you need in
Yes.
order to make this easier.
Yes. I mean, Emily, I just want to start and end with holding all of the space about if someone took my Vyvanse away at this point in my life, I know how I would function because I'm an ADHD certified clinical services provider and I do have things that I do besides just the medication. But I also I want to hold space for there's no magic pill, obviously, but like I have a girlfriend who the first day she took Vyvanse, she was like, "Is this what other people's brains sound like? It's so
Yeah.
quiet. Like, is
Yeah.
this what's happening?" And I can't give any like specific details, but like hearing other people and like their children, they're like, "Well, surely that's like a placebo effect, right? Because it can't work that quickly." And I'm like, again,
Mm-mm.
there's no magic pill, but yeah,
There kind of is.
it can. And there are days where the Vyvanse just isn't Vyvancing. And so that's why we do have to have the other things that we do that help us to get to the space where we are in control or working toward navigating it with intention versus just popping a pill every morning. Because even if it does work for you and you are able to take it, it's more than just that. And like yeah, that's got to be really tough for you to have had the system in place and then have had it disrupted. And
It's
that's the
very
thing
hard.
is what you're talking about, Amanda. It's called masking, where like you just figure out a way, you over prepare, you procrastinate plan, you with children like mirror their counterparts at school. Like, oh well, that person looks, I'm using big air quotes here for the people on audio, normal, not a word. That person looks normal. Let me do what they're doing so that I don't have attention on myself or I don't feel so chaotic and twirly. And it is one of those things that it's so hard to navigate. And so I really appreciate you sharing that because again, like all these people coming in, I actually had a guest on called Chelsea Conaboy, and she wrote The Mother Brain is the name of the book. And it talks about the physical changes in our brain that occur during pregnancy. And scientifically speaking, the physical changes. And how do we think that that impacts every single other part of our mood and lives and organization, especially when our babies aren't sleeping and we're trying to breastfeed and can't, or breastfeeding and overproducing, or everywhere in between. And that is something that, again, like, I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for the physical changes of obviously the body, but also the things we don't know about. Some people don't know what a pelvic floor is, and that your brain is actually changing. So again, just all of these things for everybody to be in a space of, oh, hey, okay, so maybe it's not just me.
Right.
Yeah.
I always think it's so funny too when you talk about the physical changes of the brain that, quote unquote, mom brain is a real thing, right? The gray matter in your brain changes during pregnancy in order to accommodate, right, different tasks that you are soon going to have. So it helps you to prioritize, oh, my baby's crying, I need to go feed them, over where are my car keys, because that's not as an important brain function in that moment, right?
Well, on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, yes, your child's actual physical safety is more important than being, but yes, exactly. Like when we think of it that way, yeah.
So mom brain is a real thing. It's the same way, you were talking about the guest that you had on. Matrescence is the name of like the anthropological form of the transition we go through in new motherhood. And matrescence, which we don't talk about, is an actual anthropologically studied phenomenon that talks about how we're basically going through the same change as the push of adolescence. So we're changing spiritually, physically, emotionally, hormonally, right?
Yes.
And we just don't talk about it, which is insane to me. So it's no surprise that a lot of women start getting all these different diagnoses after they have children, because you are really becoming a different person at the end of the day.
Yes.
Well, what makes it hard too is when your partner doesn't understand what your body and your brain are going through. Because let's just be honest, okay? Men don't have a clue when it comes to what it is to create life and what it puts your brain, your body, your soul, everything into. So when you're going through all of these pre and post changes through the journey of motherhood and bringing life into the world, I mean, it takes months up to years for your brain and your body to fully recover from that process. And especially parents who are having kids back to back and everything. And I just feel like men, your partners, they don't understand it. And I'm hoping that maybe some husbands and some dads will listen to our show and get some more insight onto what we actually go through. And maybe it'll normalize some of the things that we do or say, where it might seem like, why can't you remember this? Or why are you feeling this way? And you feel like you just want to shout at them, this is why, but you don't know why.
Well, and I like twofold here. One, acknowledging that sometimes it's hard to articulate. I don't have the language for it. I myself don't understand what's going on. And also, depending on each couple's situation, sometimes it's easier to consume new information from other people. So a non-birthing person hearing this from y'all might click with somebody like,
yeah,
oh my gosh, that's what she's been saying. Like, or again, and normalizing that as well. Hopefully our partners are supportive and understanding outright, but to be able to be like, oh, it's not just her. Oh, that is something that's happening. And so both of those things can be so helpful. Of when you don't have the language for it, it's hard for you to navigate. And it's certainly hard for a partner, which I actually have a guest coming up on my show where we're literally going to talk about navigating. She specializes in couples. And like, how do you navigate when one or both partners have neurodivergence? Like, what does that look like? How do we name it and claim it? What do we do? Because, oh, that's why you're like that. Oh, that's why you're like
it's hard. It's really hard. And I love my husband. He's an amazing husband. He's an amazing father. But, there's times where, like you said, you can't even name it yourself. And you're just feeling you're going through the feelings and you're trying to become normal again. And especially if you do have adult ADHD or you've had it your whole life, like I have, and you don't have a treatment for it, I probably need to hire you as my therapist, Meg, because it's so hard because it affects so many other aspects of your brain besides just your focus. And it just kind of spirals, everything else just kind of spirals out of control. And it's just, yeah, it's a whole thing. I mean, you could talk for days about the effects that it can have on your life, your relationship, the way you focus, the way you get things done or procrastinate. And so, yeah, I mean, that would be lovely and amazing if some husbands and fathers would tune into any of our shows and hear it from other people and be like you said, oh, that's why she's feeling that way. That's why she reacted that way. That's why she's so tired. This is, maybe it would make sense to hear, sometimes your kids don't listen to you when you tell them something, but they'll listen to the grandparent or they'll listen to the aunt and uncle. It's like they need to be told by somebody else that this is why this is happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really love, it's so hard to get to an authentic place of healing and to get toward goals when we're not being honest with ourselves of where we're starting. And some of that is our willful choosing to pretend like things, living in the blessed place of denial. And some of that is complete ignorance of just not knowing some of the things, how to articulate that, what that means. And so we have this vision of, I want to put in the work, I want to do the journaling, I want to get the therapist, I want to hire the coach, I want to whatever that is. And it's like, where do we start? And that can be so, I foresee this series and what this evolves into as being a space for people to have some more awareness and be able to put pieces together to understand their baseline so that they can be more intentional about their short-term and long-term goals and what that looks like and what the ideal looks like. And again, allowing yourself to pivot along the way of that was the ideal, but then this changed, but I know where I started and where I've come from and how I'm going to continue to move forward.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think the key with it when it comes to any diagnosis is to try to have as much of a solid strategy that you can fall back on. The one thing that I have found to be extremely helpful more recently is I don't like exercising, but let me tell you, I am a much happier, more productive person if the first thing I do in the morning is exercise.
Endorphins make you happy.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where, like, having an ADHD brain, I wake up and I've got about, I don't know, 1,000 different thoughts going through my head.
Yes.
And for whatever reason, for me, when I'm weightlifting or I'm walking or I'm running, it actually slows down my brain.
There's science behind that. That is your gray matter. The cerebellum is impacted by movement. Like one of the trainings that I did for my ADHD CCSP was talking about, like, he had a girl in junior high jump rope for 5 minutes before she sat down to try to do her homework because it was too chaotic for her. And that it really stimulates your brains in certain ways. And I also do really encourage everybody, this is my soapbox, like, let the first thing that you do in the morning not be touching your phone, obviously, besides turning off your alarm, but like getting up and going pee and brushing your teeth. And unless you have, of course, there's always a caveat, right? If there's some sort of possible, like, I need to check on the health and well-being of somebody, of course. But in terms of scrolling and whatever, like, avoiding that, like delaying that dopamine hit of your phone, trying the grayscale feature on your phone, some of those things, getting up in the morning first thing, not letting that be the first thing that you do. And again, Amanda, literally what you're talking about, that's a scientifically based thing. Some sort of movement can really help that brain feel less chaotic.
Yeah. I mean, again, this just goes back to being a mother too. I mean, how many extra responsibilities are we all holding as women and moms that our husbands probably think about very infrequently, right?
Glennon Doyle calls it tickering, and I utilize that term because it makes it just like constantly tick, 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 tick. Fundraiser at school, cupcakes for half birthday, costume party for 101 Dalmatians Day for 101st day of school, da 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 da. Someone's birthday. Did I get that birthday party? What was the theme again? It was Paw Patrol. Like, the default caregiver, that is our brain. And it is up to us to take some of that first step and do a little more of the initial capital outlay to consider, like, what does that look like for me? How can I offload some of these behaviors these things that need to be done, and also getting that empathetic response and support from your partner is so helpful, because the tickering does not come natural to some parents. And then there is so much friction and resentment because we're not meeting each other with empathy, and we're just causing the fight and the interpersonal turmoil that comes with that. So like tickering, yes.
We've talked about, Amanda and I have kind of talked a little bit about the default parenting, narrative, because I again love my husband.
Of course.
But I'm the one that's like, okay, I have to make the orthodontist appointment. I need to go, they have to have the dentist appointment, the meningitis vaccine. He needs, and I homeschool. So I have my almost 16-year-old and almost 3-year-old here at home. I homeschool my oldest and might homeschool my second. I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, we'll see how that
works. A
little
wild, so
each
we'll see.
child.
But, that on top of everything around the house, on top of the appointments, like you said, the birthdays, just everything. I feel like Christmas assembly, my husband is not an assembler. So when it comes to putting things together, doing those types of things, I kind of feel like all of that kind of falls to me. And I'm also, Amanda and I are both, we've talked, very type A, very control personalities.
Yes.
And, so a lot of that burden sometimes is self-inflicted. It's not always the
I feel
partner.
that.
Yeah, it's not always your partner that's putting it on to you. You're taking it on yourself because you're just like, well, I'll just do it. I'll just get it done. I'll do it. I'll just get it done, and it'll get done right because I'm going to do it. And that too is just so self-damaging. And if you have a partner that's willing to take on more and willing to help, you need to be open to letting that happen, because it's like you said, it's like a spiral, like a tickering, like it's just a spiral downward, because you're just constantly have these thoughts and these events and these obligations and these appointments and everything running through your brain, and it never stops.
Yeah.
It's exhausting.
Absolutely. I like the piece about the type A, and like the idea of like which balls are glass and which are rubber when you're juggling everything. And if you really need this one pie recipe to be done this certain way, and your partner's like, no, I got it. And you're like, over my dead body, well, I give you great Aunt Muriel's secret recipe to then that's great. But that's a real intentional choice that you've made. When we're doing things with intention, when we're over, I don't want to say over, we don't want to overextend ourselves, but when we're continuing to extend ourselves with intention and awareness, that's a different thing than just like, I have to. And so that's a thing that I'm going to do. And is there something then? But I would love if you could go grab that 5-year-old birthday party Ninja Turtles. Could you pop on to the shop and get that gift? That's a place where I don't necessarily care which Ninja Turtle gift they get, but it's gotten and it's ready. But the pie has to be just so. And having that intention there is so helpful. And it's just sometimes, we talk about like the roommate conversation, which is not sexy at all, but like so many partners don't do that and just kind of naturally fall and hope, but we're in love, so we're magically going to live happily ever after, and like the fairy book story to all that. But it doesn't always work that way. And when you're articulating and communicating, you're setting everyone up for much more success.
Yeah. I mean, I also think that the one thing that moms really don't do enough of is just give themselves grace.
Okay.
We're always trying to be the quote unquote perfect mom.
Yes.
And I think the sooner culturally we get to a place where we stop promoting that narrative, the sooner partners will start to step in, and we'll start feeling better about the way that we parent, right? Because there's just been such a narrative of the mom has to do everything for so long, so many decades, that we just accept that burden without coming to, this idea that no, two people are needed to make one child. So therefore there should be two people that help to raise that child, right? Especially now that, a lot of moms are the primary breadwinner, right? It had been in place that way because the men had been the breadwinners. But now that, roles have shifted in so many different ways and both parents are working, it's kind of a time for partners to really step up and work together.
Yes.
But also as a mom to just realize that you are going to make mistakes, and that's okay. right? Like you're going to forget that cake for the 5-year-old's birthday.
Mhm.
Even like the other day, I remember George had lost a tooth, and it's funny how your mom brain works, right? And I was like, he left the tooth out. I totally forgot about it, right?
Yep.
And then all of a sudden at 3 a.m., I'm like, my eyes are open. I'm like,
There it
oh
is.
my God, I forgot to put, money in for the tooth fairy, right?
Yes.
And, at the end of the day, right? If I had not put the money there, I could have said, "Oh, the tooth fairy must not have been working on a Tuesday," or whatever it was. Like I could have made something up that would have
Yeah.
worked. But instead, I got up out of bed at 3 a.m. I'm like shuffling through my purse to try to find like $2-3 to take the tooth for. And then I'm like, where do I put the tooth? It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I have no idea. Right. So we put so much pressure on ourselves to
So
be
relatable.
this perfect role model and to, do everything right when it doesn't really change the outcome. Right.
Well, social
I
media
get a
doesn't
hookup
help. tomorrow.
It'll be fine. Right.
I
Yeah.
honestly love the idea of the creative pivot too, where you're like, oh, well, it was snowing in Florida yesterday, so the tooth fairy got stuck or
Wings could move.
whatever. And like that's also fine too. And it's making that choice, right? And I love I could go in again on your ADHD, the brain of it all of like it was very important to me and I knew exactly where that tooth was. And then I went and opened the dishwasher, which reminded me I needed to go to the garage, but then I was upstairs and then and that tooth is where at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Well, and social media doesn't help. And let's be honest. Like, back to Amanda and I were joking about this the other day, and I was saying, it is really hard to film your whole life. Like these people who film their entire day, their entire life. I've tried it, but I was like, sometimes when I do it, that's why you don't see me past breakfast because I'm over it and I'm done. But I will show you my messy living room. I will show you the toys everywhere. I will show you the sink full of dishes. I will show you the reality of things. And there's so many people out there that are putting fake perfection, out there. And it makes it harder for these people who really do put a lot of stock into social media and who really think that it's real. And it creates these just such unrealistic expectations and bars that you could just never meet or ever come to. And that's why I really love the people out there that show the dirtiness, show the grit and the grime of real life and make fun of it and joke about it and just like this is real and versus the lie of perfection, I guess, that so many parents see and that think that that's what they're supposed to be doing when it's not at all.
A lived in life is messy.
Yes.
I give this is the opposite of shade. I love the home edit and bless they've done a Walmart line for social
Yes,
workers
love
like
them.
me who can afford the social work version, like the Walmart version. So bless up. The thing is that you do see stuff like that, and we see this, and it's like, oh my gosh, that gives me so much a sense of peace and calm to see something so meticulous and organized. And it's like, yes, that's very beautiful, but they're not showing you. And again, I have no notes for the home edit. Y'all keep doing exactly what you're doing. But for the rest of us watching it, like, let that be a benchmark for you. Let that be like the ideal, the thing that you're looking at. Do go and check out, they are not a sponsor of this podcast. Do go and check out an affordable way system that makes things. And
Drop their book.
yeah, like right. Hello. And then if they want to be a sponsor of this podcast, they're welcome to. But like then understand that then you have a 3-year-old who's going to go and dig into that drawer that has the applesauce in it and that you had nicely lined up and facing forward and everything. And that they're 3 and that's not a priority to them. Or your 40-year-old husband when you face everything in the condiments drawer in the fridge and it gives you so much joy to look at it like that. And then he plops the mustard and the ketchup right back in and however he wants. It's life and life is messy and we can't control a lot of these things and we can have ideals and we can have goals and be intentional to a certain point and then we have to allow ourselves again coming back I mean as you're saying that grace like we have grace for days for so many other people and we've got to start turning it inward on ourselves.
I try the home edit. I do try. I told Amanda knows I'm going through it right now trying to clean out and reorganize my entire house to a point, but when you work and you do try to get it organized, I did go through that one small period where I was like, I'm going to make this all perfect. and it's the fridge is going to be lined up. It's going to be, it's like you said, it's all going to be perfect. It's going to be labeled. It's going to be whatever.
Yes.
And it just didn't stick. I mean, part of it does, but part of it doesn't. And I had to, like you said, give myself the grace to realize, okay, that's a TV show. And and I'm not a celebrity that can afford a housekeeper constantly to keep that up for me. I have young children. I have a teenager. I have what I call my 42-year-old child. Yeah. It honestly, he's the worst. He's the worst. Love him. But yeah, it's just not a reality for it to stay perfect all the time. And you build that again creates anxiety because you do the work to try to make it as neat as you can, and then your expectation in your mind is for it to remain that way, and it doesn't, and then that creates anxiety and that creates stress. And it's just better to just, like you said, give grace and kind of try to go with the flow, and it is what it is, and let it be, and it's not the end of the world.
Yes. I also thought it was so funny. I don't know if you saw this, but Marie Kondo was interviewed not too long ago. And she said,
go ahead.
Notice she said in her thing, she said, okay, so all of the things that I wrote about, they all apply to people who don't have children.
There it is.
Oh my gosh.
As soon as she had her own children, she couldn't, as soon as she had her own children, she could not maintain it even for herself. So again, you got to give yourself grace.
She made an empire based off of being Marie Kondo, and what beautiful vulnerability to be like, my friends, let me
it ain't real.
Yes. And I think we need to remember that. Like, it's okay to have aspirations. It's okay to try things. We don't want to let things fall by the wayside, of course. And I like to encourage people too. The fact that you're asking, am I doing this correctly? Am I doing the best I can for my children? Am I trying to set everyone up for success? The fact that there's intention, again, I'm coming back to how many times I said that word today. There's intention there. So giving ourselves the credit for that as well. Like, we can't be perfect. We will never be perfect. Perfection is not real. Progress is. And grace. It's going to be okay. You're trying. There's intention. We can learn. That's why we're doing these things. That's why you're listening to the show. That's why you're showing up for the lives and whatever Unfiltered and Unstoppable does become and evolve into, and everything moving forward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. What a treat. I feel like I could talk to you for a whole other 60 minutes, but I know everyone's got to get going on with the rest of their days. It'll all be in the show notes. Can you all tell us the best place to find you?
So Amanda? I was going to say, you can find me on Instagram at Amanda Tice, and it also has a link on my profile, and I think on Emily's as well, to Unfiltered and Unstoppable, because we have our own website, which is unfilteredandunstoppable.com, which gives you a little overview about ourselves, our Instagram profiles, but also our amazing sponsors and guests as well.
Amazing.
And I'm best to find on Instagram. I am stay-at-home mom, has a lot going on. The stay-at-home mom is SAHM, and that is my handle. That's the best place to find me or contact me if you'd like to. I also have a link to the Unfiltered and Unstoppable.com, and you can feel free at any time to message us. We also have hellounfiltered@yahoo.com if you have any questions about our show or anything that you want us to bring up. During the discussions.
Right? People have questions that they'd love to have answered by your
right. Questions they'd love to have answered during the show or after a live. If they have questions about something we discussed, feel free to message either one of us individually or through the email.
Amazing. Well, thank you also. Oh, so go ahead, please. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say also, my book, The New Mom Code, is now available on Audible, and it still is on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
Amazing. Yes, definitely. Everyone go please check that. I'm excited to hear you read it to me, as well as having already read it a couple of times myself. Thank you all again so much for being on the 100th episode of the Perinatal Podcast.
Yay, congrats.
I always hate doing this, and I know we're not supposed to say hate, but like, I just dislike it so much. But if everyone could go out and just give a quick little 5 stars, maybe write a sentence or 2 review, that would be so helpful for the algorithms out there. And remember, you all, be curious, not judgmental, and that includes with yourself. And we'll see you next time on the Perinatal Podcast.